Rinaldi, better known as Little John. And John, first of all, I want to thank you for all the years of entertainment that you. I know you heard this, but I grew up watching you guys and idolized you guys.
Thank you. We're glad somebody watched.
I want you to explain, because everybody thinks I'm crazy, about when I said maybe I should have asked the guy for half a head of lettuce.
Well, the half a head of lettuce skit was, that was done, I hate to tell you, Dave, but that was done about 40 years ago. And it was done in downtown Cleveland in a grocery store. And basically the skit, in case somebody didn't see it, is that I'm a grocery clerk, and I'm standing there, and this big guy comes in and he asks for a half a head of lettuce, and I tell him not a full head of lettuce. He goes, no, he wants a half a head of lettuce. And I go, all right. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't a guy take a full head of lettuce? Anyway, so I go back and I ask Chuck, who's also a store clerk, and I say, hey, do you have a big knife? And he goes, a big knife? What would you like a big knife for? I go, because some big ugly jerk, and in that time the big guy walks behind me with like a half head of lettuce, and I turn around and see him and I go, and this fine gentleman wants the other half.
Am I right? I think I either heard or read that was the first speaking role you had.
Yes, that was the first one I actually talked to.
Because you were in all kinds of. Now, when you started actually in the sketches, you were taking dance lessons, or you knew a guy that was a dance instructor?
Well, how I started on the show was because of a gentleman by the name of Dick Blake, who was a dance instructor at the time. And he's still around. He still gives dance lessons and everything. And very good. And he used to always come into the jewelry store that I was working at. And we had a little problem in the jewelry store that we cracked his stone. And he wanted money, and we wanted to give him another stone. So they would tell me as a salesman, go make him laugh, being the young salesman. So I'd fool around with him, and he goes, do you like to be funny? And I said, yeah. He goes, I know these guys, Houlihan and Big Chuck. I said, well, it's good. Here's my card. Tell him to give me a call. And he walked out of the store. Little did I know that he really did know Houlihan and Big Chuck. And he had dance studios around the city. And he'd always call Chuck and say, hey, do you need anybody? And he called Chuck one day, and Chuck says, I need a little girl. And he goes, well, I don't have a little girl, but I have a little guy. And he says, well, what's his name? He goes, John Rinaldi. He goes, oh, Dr. Rinaldi's son. Well, actually, I was his nephew.
Right.
And my uncle was the same size as I am. And he said, okay. So he called me at the store. And I answered the phone, Mr. Rinaldi, may I help you? And he goes, Big Chuck here.
Yeah.
And I go, that's exactly what I said. Who calls one and says that? In the meantime, I find myself calling people now saying Little John here. And he wanted us to do a skit and everything. I said, sure, no problem. And he said, I'll send you the stuff out. Never got anything in the mail. Then he calls next week. What'd you think of it? I said, I didn't get anything. And he said, oh, we'll do it anyway. And I said, what are we going to do it? He goes, Bonnie's Lounge on West 222nd in Fairview. Now, I was an East Side guy, and I don't know if you know anything about Cleveland, but 40 years ago, you didn't cross the river.
Okay.
It was just unheard of. Don't ask me why. And so I said, okay, we're going to do it. So I took 3 of my buddies with me, and we went over there. And that's when I met Chuck for the first time, and we did the skit, and it was Bridget the Midget.
The Ray Stevens number.
Right, exactly.
Chuck must have loved Ray Stevens.
Yes, he used them a lot. He used them when you're hot, a lot of things.
One of his, another one I loved called The Sound Effects Man.
Oh, the Indian Love Call.
Yeah, that was Ray Stevens' Indian Love Call. And you were working all the sound effects, and either Chuck or Houlihan got all the accolades while you'd actually done all the work making all the sound effects.
Chuck was the singer, and Hooli was...
He was the producer, promoter, yeah.
You really are...
I tell you, I grew up with you guys. I always wanted to send Chuck some ideas, but I never had the courage to do so.
He got a lot of ideas from fans, from people sending things in.
In '79, Bob Wells left, Houlihan left. Did you think the show was going to be over?
I didn't. Chuck did. Well, first of all, I didn't know I was going to be the co-host. I got a telephone call from the station manager, and he said, I wanted to see you. And I went up there and went to his office. First time I was ever up on the 3rd floor. And he says, do you want to be the co-host with Big Chuck? I said, sure. He goes, go down the hall and give the interview to Ray, that's the press reporter at the time. That's how long ago it was. We had a newspaper called The Press. It's gone now. And that was it. So I went back to the store, and I told my wife, I said, I'm the co-host of the show. And she says, how much you make? And I go, I have no clue. And I had to wait until they mailed me my check.
Right here?
It was almost the same.
Almost the same.
Almost the same.
So you were surprised when that happened?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised. And then as we talked later on through the years, Chuck thought, well, it'll last a few more years, and that'll be it.
Never thought it would last as long.
Not as long, no. And he took more of a role like of Hooli, and I took more of his role when it was Houlihan and Big Chuck. And
he did a majority of the writing?
Yes, he did. As far as the writing of the show, he did it all. He did it all.
Not all, but...
Well, no, as far as the skits, I mean, people help, but as far as the writing, he did it all.
Now, some people, was it actually scripted?
Yes.
He was a very organized person.
Very organized.
Films and
very
news and everything else.
Yeah, he had no toys when he was a child, and he had a demented childhood. That's why his imagination was so good to remember all these things. But we got along good right from the beginning, and we still get along. I mean, I talk to him probably 3-4 times a week, and I see him once every week or so, and we still do commercials, and we still and we'll be back on the air.
Do you miss it?
Yes, tremendous.
I got the sense that when Chuck, in a sense, signed off, didn't really. I know he wasn't leaving, but then when he signed off, that you weren't quite ready.
No, I would. No, they'd take me kicking and screaming.
Did you think of kind of taking over the hosting role? Chuck doing some of the still doing the writing.
No,
and stuff?
See, he was Mr. Inside and I was Mr. Outside, and it worked out well. And she would write the skits, he'd pull the tapes, and we'd get everything ready, and then I would leave work, run down there, and thank my second grade teacher that taught me how to read, because everything was pretty much scripted. I mean, I got to do ad libs on my own at the not at the beginning though.
I know in creating a few sketches myself, Chuck's always got to have ideas.
Right.
I mean, as my wife tells me, not everything in life is a segue, and actually, it is. But he's got to have ideas. Does you see some TV specials coming up, or is it done with Fox 8?
Well, I won't say it's done with Fox 8. Let's just say we're on hold.
Okay.
Because I still got this glimmer of hope that we're going to be back on.
At least, with specials or a summer
I thought we were doing specials, but I think we'll be doing shows.
That's fantastic.
We'll be back, folks.
Yeah. Thanks for joining the Little Rinaldi Show, the Little John Show.